We're about to be joined by Jon Morosi. He is our Major League Baseball insider, and there's actually positive news in Major League Baseball, which is that other than the rain out yesterday, we would have had all 30 different Major League Baseball teams playing together, I believe for the first time since the Marlins and the Cardinals outbreaks happened. We bring in now Jon Morosi at JONMOROSI. You can find him on Twitter at Jon Morosi. Jon, am I right that Major League Baseball appears, knock on wood, furiously, given the fact that it's 2020, to have made it all the way through the early outbreaks of the coronavirus, and as they come up on what is wildly soon to be the midway point of the season, everybody's able to play?
Well, good morning, Clay, and yes, that is correct. We should have all teams active here today and going forward, which is phenomenal. Of course, well, I guess there was an off day for some teams today, but this weekend, let's say, you'll have everybody active, and so that's great news. Also great news is that you'll be at Dodger Stadium, right? The Dodger Dream Foundation donation. So well done, my friend. Thanks for helping the community there and getting the entire team there present at Dodger Stadium. What a great gesture by you, and a pretty cool touch there going forward.
Yeah, it should be fun. Me, Danny G, and Roberto, for people who don't know, will have cardboard cutouts. You can play Where's Waldo if you are a Dodger fan to look for us in the stands behind somewhere. We don't know it. Danny G, do you know where we are yet?
No, I'm going to be getting that information any day now.
All right, so the Dodgers are going to let us know, but we have got the cardboard cutouts coming up for charity, so that should be cool to actually be able to check it out. Let's dive into what we're actually seeing on the field right now, Jon. When you look at, like I said, crazily, we're almost at the halfway point. Who do you think have been the two best teams? If you had to, let's pretend we're at the halfway point. Who do you think are the two most likely teams to meet in the World Series?
Great question, Clay. Yeah, I think in the American League, the A's have been phenomenal, and they had a great start last night from Jesus Luzardo, one of their young, ascendant starting pitchers who, if he's going to pitch like that going forward, they've got a chance to be a dominant team. Their offense, I think, is really diverse. They've got nice power-speed combination. Matt Chapman, one of the really up-and-coming stars in the sport, they're playing third base. So I think overall, Oakland has been the most impressive one in the AL. The Yankees still have a great team, but they've had injuries again. Stanton, Judge, now LeMahieu as well. So I think some concerns there. Oakland has just been the best all-around team, I believe, so far in the American League. And then in the NL, I think the Dodgers, I'm still a little concerned about Bellinger and Muncy and their production, but their pitching is really solid. The Cubs, though, are right behind them, and I think that Yu Darvish is someone who has got a lot of criticism early in his time there with the Cubs after signing that massive contract, and I think overall he has pitched phenomenally well this year. It's been, I think, one of the biggest reasons why they're in first place. So I will say I'll give the NL edge to the Dodgers, but the Cubs are right there in a way that I simply did not expect would be the case when the season began.
When you look at some of the unwritten rules of baseball, and this can be so frustrating for casual fans, Fernando Tatis Jr., I believe, got ripped to the high heavens for swinging for the fences on a 3-0 pitch with the bases loaded. I tend to look at it from the perspective of if you don't want a guy to swing at 3-0, don't throw him 3 straight balls. What was the story here? And is this an example of maybe the unwritten rules of baseball totally conflicting with the way that the average fan would watch baseball?
No, you're absolutely right, Clay. And first of all, the point that you made about if you want to avoid that happening, just throw better pitches and don't get into a 3-0 count. That in fact, is basically what Jack Flaherty, one of the star pitchers in the game, said as well on Twitter, saying that, listen, this is not Fernando Tatis Jr.'s fault. And I think you're right, Flaherty's right. And to me, baseball has to find a way collectively to really empower these young players and grow the game in a way that is exciting to kids like your sons who are watching the game.
We watch every night.
Right, and do they want to see Acuna walk, or do they want to see Acuna from the Braves hit a home run at 3-0? This is the essential, I think, part of the sport that there are these unwritten rules that are unwritten because they're very difficult to justify if you ever did put them in writing. And I think this is one of them. It doesn't make a lot of sense, especially when you've got someone in the case of Tatis who was really taking the game by storm and won a lot of fans over this season. I don't get how you would tell him to pull back and stop being what a sensational player and person and really magnetic personality that he is. So it's disappointing, I think, from baseball's standpoint. I hope that it changes a bit. And one thing that I thought was really interesting, Clay, is that there's one of the MLB official social media channels is @Cut4. It's sort of a little bit more of the irreverent, younger Twitter feed. And they basically tweeted at that account 2 days ago that unwritten rules are meant to be broken. So it really is the opinion in many ways of the league itself that Tatis should be allowed to be himself. It's just that you've got maybe some players and managers who are still subscribing to the old school mentality, which in my opinion is not moving the game forward.
It's interesting because I watch now, my 9-year-old has turned into a huge Atlanta Braves fan. And so we watch every night in my house. We have a Braves game on for 3 hours. And we got to watch. It was a great game against the Nationals recently when Dansby Swanson hit a walk-off 2-run homer. They scored 4 runs in the bottom of the ninth. The Braves did to win 7-6, I think it was. But one of the things that's fun about watching a game with your 9-year-old or a young kid in general who's learning the game is having conversations about strategy during the course of the game, right? And that can go for any sport, but specifically the 3-0 count, like, hey, are you going to have him taking here? Hey, are you going to have him looking for the perfect pitch? Do you let him swing? All of those conversations, I think, are what make baseball fun because there's so much time to fill when the ball's not actually in play that the psychology of the game is a huge part of it. And I can't even imagine trying to explain to him why swinging at a 3-0 pitch is not permissible when the bases are loaded. Like, he wants to see the grand slam there. He wants the player to be swinging for the fences. That's literally one of the reasons to be watching.
Exactly right. And I think, Clay, that's very well said. If you're concerned as a manager, and again, you just mentioned the big comeback in one inning from 4 runs down to 3 runs down. In this day and age, the ball jumps and comebacks can happen quickly. I'm always reluctant to turn off the faucet and pull back and stop trying to score runs because you never know what's going to happen in baseball, especially in 2020. But if you're that concerned, if it's 20-0, and you don't want your star player to get even more numbers and hit a home run there, just pinch hit for him. Just get him out of the game. If that's your concern, it's one of those. It's like in football. There's the old question of if it's 60-20 with 4 minutes left, and if you put in the third team, I've always thought that they're trying to earn their playing time for the future. Let them play. But the first team is maybe a little bit of a different story. But if you're putting the second team out there and it's a 40-point game, let them play. Don't put all these unwritten rules on what a football team can do in that situation.
I understand the concept of unwritten rules, and I'll give you an example. In the NBA or college basketball, particularly the NBA, though, they'll a lot of times let you dribble out the clock for the final 15 or 20 seconds when the game is decided. If you decide to throw the ball ahead and somebody does a 360 dunk to end the game, I understand the idea that you would be angry if you are an NBA player. But that's when the game is already over. When, maybe if it's 20-0 and you're trying to steal second base, I understand why somebody would be angry. Or if you're trying to wipe somebody out to keep them from throwing for a double play when the game's already decided. But the game wasn't decided there. So I do think using common sense about when a game is fully in play and when it's not is worthy of discussion in an intelligent manner. Also worthy of discussion in an intelligent manner is what's going to happen with the postseason in Major League Baseball. I think a lot of people haven't even realized this yet because there's been so much chaos going on. But they expanded the postseason. 16 teams in Major League Baseball going to be in the postseason. What are you hearing about the idea of potentially trying to implement a bubble-ish type statement and scenario for Major League Baseball, as now we can start to turn our attention a little bit at least towards the postseason because we're almost halfway through the regular season?
Well, I think it is likely at some point, Clay, that we will see a bubble. Now, it's unknown if it's going to be from the very beginning or maybe after the first round or therefore the Division Series, Championship Series, but I think at some point we will see the bubble. Now, I think it's important to note that the first round now, and you mentioned the expanded playoffs, which I think is a great storyline and really important to emphasize here. The first round is scheduled to be best of 3 at the site of the higher seed. So it's 1-8, 2-7, 3-6 are the seeding pairings there, and you would just go to the one site, play at that site, and then the division series, which we have seen now for years, which has 4 teams in it per league, that would then begin at that point in time. So I think that it might make sense to wait until after round 1. That way it's a little easier to begin right away in those cities where the top seed's already there probably, and they could just be joined by their opponent. But we may well see it happen for the entire time through. I know Jeff Pass has reported that the 2 most likely bubble areas would be either Texas and then Southern California there for the month of October. So maybe you do one league in Texas, one league in California, do it that way, sort of similar to what the conference structure has been for hockey, where you've had the East in Toronto and the West in Edmonton. I think that general idea makes a lot of sense. We've seen the success, Clay, of bubbles. MLS, for the most part, was very successful, and then the NBA and NHL have been phenomenally successful. So I think that's the way to go. MLB realizes that certainly their greatest revenues come from the postseason, and that is, I think, the most important thing to do is protect the sanctity of those games, and if you have to have 2 different sites operating within that bubble, maybe you go Houston and Texas, and maybe you go Angels and Dodgers in California, then you could play multiple games a day and get them all in safely, and I think that's probably the way to go.
I grew up watching the Cincinnati Reds. Marty Brennaman and Joe Nuxhall called their games. A lot of people remember Joe Nuxhall. I think he pitched in Major League Baseball if he was 15 years old. It's one of the great stories of all time. I think he was the youngest pitcher in the history of Major League Baseball, if I'm not mistaken. Those guys were fantastic. I have not spent as much time watching Marty's son, Tom, call Cincinnati Reds games, but obviously for people out there, this has been a major story. There was an off-the-mic gay slur that was uttered. What do you think happens here? How does the team handle it? How big of a story does this become? It's already a big story. Is it going to grow throughout the day, or do you think it kind of goes down because he's already apologized and left the booth? What happens here?
Well, Clay, it's a great question. It's hard to know where the story goes next. I think it was a very strong statement, though, made by the Reds last night. He was pulled off the air mid-game, suspended now effective immediately. He did apologize on the air, and I think now it's just a matter of how the Reds handle it going forward in consultation with MLB. As you mentioned, his family has long-standing connections to the organization, and it will be, I'm sure, a difficult decision for the Reds, whatever direction they go. But I think MLB has done a very good job in recent years of really adding a lot of resources in the area of diversity and inclusion. They've got a great office there. Billy Beane, of course, former player, leads it there. So I think that MLB will probably be involved. The Reds will be involved. It's difficult to know where the story goes next. I do think Tom was remorseful last night, but that was also something that just should never appear on the air or a broadcast or any context there. So I think it's a very difficult day for the Reds, and I think they handled it the right way last night by suspending him right away. And even Reds players, Amir Garrett, Matt Bowman, have both released some very, I think, thoughtful tweets on the subject as well, just supporting the LGBT community. So I think overall the Reds have done a good job so far, and now it's just a matter of what that final decision is going to be.
I know you've been traveling around the Midwest to go to games themselves, but also you're a Big Ten fan, a Michigan fan, like my wife, who is a Michigan grad.
Right.
What is the vibe in Ann Arbor theoretically with a college football-less season going on? And I don't even know exactly. I haven't done a lot of research, but are students arriving back in the community? What does it feel like as someone who lives in a college town for what will be a profoundly, I would imagine, it's already been a profoundly strange spring, but what is the fall feeling like for you and your family and other community members in Ann Arbor?
Well, it's a very uncertain time. I think there's a lot of anxiety about what will happen next, and certainly living in a college town, how much infection we could see once the kids return from all around the world. And I think that right now is still Michigan's plan is to have students on campus. I think a lot of the instruction will be remote, but the students will be here. Now, Michigan State has made a different decision just in the last couple of days where they're saying effectively to their students, stay home, and we'll be all virtual learning for the fall. So Ann Arbor itself and Washtenaw County, we've done a pretty good job with the COVID numbers overall, even since it began, for the most part, in the spring. And so I think there's a little bit of unease about if the good work that's been done here is now in some form of jeopardy. I think what we saw just down the road, South Bend's 2.5 hours away, and of course the news yesterday where they're going to now move remote for the next 2 weeks, and I think even football practice there has been paused for the next couple of days. It's a difficult situation. I don't think there's any one right answer of how to handle all this. I did see the report about potentially playing in the middle of winter, which I'm not really a huge fan of. I don't really see where the added benefit would be of that plan, indoors in the winter versus outdoors in the fall or later spring. But it's a difficult situation for everybody to manage, and I'm just hoping, like everybody is, for health and for common sense and for finding ways to be as safe as we can here in the weeks to come.
Thanks, John. We'll talk to you next week. Enjoy the games over the weekend.